So you're thinking about moving to Jacksonville, Florida, and you decide that you want to buy a new construction home here. That's fantastic. And guess what? This video is exactly the one that you need to see. So without holding anything back, I'm going to go over just what all the builders do here, how they do things differently, and how they do things similarly, and give you a better idea of what to expect when buying new construction here in Jacksonville, Florida. So let's get right on into it. So starting off, we need to break down the builders here in Jacksonville into 3 different categories. And that's going to be your custom builders, your semi-custom builders, and your track builders. Now, there's a difference between all 3 of these when it comes to buying a new construction home in Jacksonville, because they all do things a little bit differently, and they all are gonna have potential homes that will fit your family's wants and needs depending on what your situation is, what your timeline is, and what you're hoping to do with this next home in your family or first home in your family's life. So starting off, we're gonna discuss track builders. Track builders are gonna be the ones that you see nationwide, such as D.R. Horton, KB Homes to some degree, as well as Lennar. Those are gonna be 3 national builders that are very well known because of how large they are. But what makes them very specific in being track builders is that when you buy with them, typically, and again, I say that because KB doesn't always have it this way, but Lennar and D.R. Horton, this is how you're typically gonna see, at least here in Jacksonville. But typically with a track builder, what they do is they design all their homes in-house when it comes down to all the structural and design center finishes. And then they build those homes specifically for each lot that they own in any individual neighborhood, whether if they have the buyer already under contract or not. And so the reason they do this is because they control the process from start to finish when it comes to the color choices and what finishes are in the home. So they can also can control the price of the home a little bit better as well doing it that way. So again, if you want to know more about what neighborhoods D.R. Horton has or Lennar has here in Jacksonville, definitely reach out to me with a call, a text, an email. It's going to be on the screen, or you can set a time on my calendar, which is going to have a link to it in the description of this video. So again, don't hesitate, check that out right now. But overall, what we can do is we can discuss, again, what may make them the right fit for you and your family, depending on your situation. Now, an example that I like to give when it comes to these builders is when it comes to who is more maybe that desired person for them, is a lot of times it's going to be your first time home buyers. Or buyers who are moving to the area and don't have a ton of time to find a home, or they may have a lease that's ending. And so overall, they may be on a bit of a time crunch. So these are going to be the people too that sometimes may need more closing cost concessions help with, or want the best rate possible with some different rate buy downs. And that's something that these builders offer tremendously to help you as a buyer. I've had it before with all these builders where not only do they sometimes come off their price a little bit, but they also typically will either pay most, if not all, of your closing costs and sometimes prepaids. Now there's caveats to that, just like with anything, and normally that's going to require that you do use their preferred lender or in-house lender, sometimes is what it's also called. But overall, when you're going with a builder that, again, designs everything from start to finish, and when you're going under contract, sometimes the home is already complete and you're dealing with a normal 30-day closing time frame, again, that's what you're looking for, is those closing cost concessions and also rate buy downs. Rate buy downs that we're seeing tremendously, right now, and we will probably see in the future too, just to different, varying levels. But these builders, typically they buy a clump of rate buy downs when they looking at doing loans, obviously, for their communities. And so because they bought those rate buy downs, it does cost them less than it would be for you or I as a consumer. But when you do use their preferred lender, they can give you those rates. And those rates, they can be sometimes life of loan buy down rates. We've seen it anywhere from 1 to 3% less than what the current rates are right this second. Sometimes they do what's called a 2-1 buy down, where they buy it down 2% in the first year, 1% in the second year, and then in year 3, you go back to what the rate is at that time when you've gotten that loan. So as an example, it may be 6.5%, at one point, and they're buying it down to 4.5% for your first year and 5.5% for your second year. At the end of the day, you have to qualify off the 6.5%, but it makes a huge difference to be able to have some relief in those first couple years while you're living in the house. So that's something else that they do as well that definitely makes them very distinct in how they handle things to be able to provide the best product they can for what their goal is to you as a consumer or as a buyer. In addition, a lot of times too, these are going to be your sometimes more affordable homes because of the fact that they're controlling so much throughout the process. They normally have the margins to be able to offer these homes at a more affordable price. It's not always a guarantee, but you do sometimes see that. So those are going to be your track builders that really control pretty much everything across the board and don't really allow you to customize anything about the home other than maybe a washer dryer, maybe a fridge, maybe a garage door opener, as surprising that is. If you want to know the story on that one, reach out to me. But overall, you're going to have very minimal say in the construction of the home and what is done with the home. But in lieu of that, you normally get good pricing and you get good incentives. And again, these, like I mentioned before, some of these builders are going to be in some of our very popular communities today, like Silverleaf. And so overall, just because of the fact that they do have homes at maybe more affordable prices, doesn't always mean that you're also in neighborhoods that aren't in that prestige that sometimes you think of when you think of the top communities here in Jacksonville. But from there, let's now talk about the semi-custom builders, which those actually will have a little bit of two flavors as well, so we'll dive into that right now. When it comes to the semi-custom builders here in Jacksonville, Florida, there's, like I mentioned, there's two flavors to it. And the reason there's two flavors is you have the semi-custom builders where, again, they're going to be a situation where they only let you do certain design center items. They only let you do certain structural changes to their homes that they've already predetermined. And then you're gonna have those semi-custom builders where, yes, you have to stay within the confines of their floor plan, but to some degree, whatever vision you have for the home, they may be willing to work with that and make it happen at a cost, even if it's outside of their standard structurals or designs that they tend to normally do. And so when it comes to working with a semi-custom builder, the big difference you're gonna see there compared to working with a track builder is that you're gonna have more say in the process. So for instance, if you have a study in the house, they may have an option where you can convert that study to a bedroom, and that may make more sense for you and your family. And again, to convert it, there will be another cost associated with it, but you can do it. And so that's the thing too with a semi-custom builder is when you are talking with them at the beginning, and I run into this all the time with other buyers I work with, other clients I work with, when you talk with them at the beginning, there's not always a final price that you're gonna know right off the top of your head when you first talk with a site agent. That's why it's so important to have someone like myself in your corner to be there as a good sounding board of advice. Again, I've been through this process dozens of times to be able to give you a better idea of what to probably expect for that end price when it's all said and done. Because again, when you meet with the site agent, with a semi-custom builder, they're gonna be able to say, hey, here's what the base plan of the house is. Okay, based off the structurals you wanna do, here's that pricing to go with it. And based off what the lot cost, because every lot has different lot premiums, sometimes there is none. But overall, if there's a lot premium, then you get that price with it as well. So normally you'll get those three items when you go under contract on a semi-custom home here. But the one item you don't get that is always the unknown going into it is your design center options. In design center options, I've had clients I've worked with before where they've spent $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at the design center. And I've had clients before where they've spent almost $200,000 at the design center. So that's a very large range, granted different size of houses, different price points, but ultimately that is one of those things where when you are talking with a builder, it's important to have someone like myself in your corner. Again, all you do is reach out to me with a call, text, and email. It's gonna be on the screen, or again, link is in the description, or calendar link is in the description of this video. Because again, that way you have someone who's going to be unbiased, who's going to be looking out for your best interests to ensure that you have a good idea of what to expect throughout the process when it comes to a cost standpoint. Because again, when you go under contract with a semi-custom builder, you're going to typically be required to put down 10%, maybe more at the time of contract, despite not knowing what the final end price will be. So that is a big difference. And so that's where, again, the positive is you do get more say in what you can do with the home. and how it's designed, but it does come at a cost and some unknowns during the process. In addition, these builders are going to be builders like Mattamy Homes, which is in Rivertown. You're going to have Toll Brothers, which kind of fits within that same demographic in a sense. And you're also going to have Pulte Homes, as well as some builders who, again, will give you that ability to make design center changes, make structural changes, but you typically have to stay within their specific structural items that they offer. And those are just to name a few. Obviously, Providence Homes is another one that you can obviously go with as well, that do some of those same things, and David Weekley as another one. And again, they all build great houses, but it is one of those things that it's important to know what you're walking into when you start with that process, because of the fact that the last thing you want to have happen is unknowns after the fact. Now, the other flavor with new construction is going to be still that semi-custom new construction, where they actually do allow you to make changes that you want, not just ones that they offer at a price or at a cost. And these are going to be your builders like ICI Homes, Riverside Homes, Mastercraft Homes. Again, they're normally going to say that, hey, if you're buying a home in Silverleaf, which all these builders are in Silverleaf, or if you're buying a home in Nocatee, ICI is in Nocatee, as well as Riverside Homes, they're going to tell you that, you have to use one of their floor plans, and they do have certain structurals that they have priced out ready to go. But if you want something different done, a lot of times they're willing to work with you and have their architects or their engineers draw it up to figure out if it can be done, and again, what that cost is. So I personally like that. I had a client of mine who went with one of those builders just recently, and again, they made some pretty cool changes, I would say, one of which was an outdoor cabana bathroom for their future pool that they're going to add in. And that's one of those things that some builders, like I said, Pulte, David Weekley, Toll Brothers, they won't do that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just something that they won't do. So that is a very cool separation between some of the semi-custom builders and other semi-custom builders. They still get put in that overall umbrella of being a semi-custom builder, because they're not a tract builder, they're not doing everything themselves. They will have what they call inventory or spec homes that kind of fit that tract mindset. That's not going to be all of their homes, but there is a differentiation there. So if you want to know more about what each builder does differently, you just have to reach out to me so I can help go over all of those questions you may have. Because again, they're all great to work with. It's just knowing how they're different from each other is the most important thing. Also, just with semi-custom builders too, I do want to also preface that some of them are going to be like tract builders, where they're going to offer up very great incentives for closing costs and for rate buy downs if you use their preferred lender. But some of them, they don't do that. Instead, what they do, they're going to give you X amount of money to use towards the price or towards design center options. And so you're still kind of getting the money, you're just getting in different ways. So overall, you're still going to have to take care of your closing costs on your own. But as far as design center options, as far as what you can kind of get there without necessarily putting up your own money for, that part they do help with. And I've seen anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 to go towards design center for those options. That being said, now we're going to talk about custom builders, which is very specific here in Jacksonville and where they're kind of located, how that works. So let's go into that right now. And don't forget too, as we go through this video, at the end, I'm also going to give you another tidbit about the builders that you definitely don't want to miss. Now the fun one, which is going to be our custom home builders. So our custom home builders, it's very specific here in Jacksonville when it comes to a custom home, because there's a big caveat that completely separates it from your semi-custom and your tract builders. With your tract builders and your semi-custom builders, you have the ability of being able to find a community that's already being built and go to a builder in that community and work with them on the lots that they own. And again, that is a very simple, very streamlined process. But when you do go with a custom home, typically it's going to require that you have to find the lot yourself. And these communities that I just mentioned that have the builders already in them, normally those builders are not going to do a custom home on those lots, and they're not going to sell those lots to you so you can bring your own custom builder. So overall, what that means is a lot of times when it comes to buying a custom home in Jacksonville, you have to always understand that you're going to have to find the lot yourself, and finding lots in Jacksonville can be kind of tough. And a lot of times it's going to put you more on the outer skirts of Jacksonville, or it's going to put you in not as new of neighborhoods in some regards, where again, you may be a new construction home in an area with older homes. That could be 2000s, early 90s, late 90s. So that's one of those things where if that's not something that would fit what you and your family are looking for, you may have to just think about is a custom home really what we want, or do we need to start talking to the semi-custom builders about one of their neighborhoods that they're in. So again, if you want to know more about how they really differentiate, you just got to reach out to me with a call, a text, and email. But overall, also when it comes to these custom builders, some of them fall in that same semi-custom category. So builders like Providence, Dream Finders, which was one I hadn't mentioned yet, ICI Homes, Riverside Homes, even I believe Mastercraft, they have what's called build on your lot, which means that, again, as long as you find the lot or you own the lot, they will build whatever house you want on that lot. So that is a really cool thing that we don't see across the board with all the builders, but when you build on your own lot with them, they do allow you to choose one of their floor plans. Sometimes it is a little more cost effective that way, or again, you have that ability to completely design the home from scratch, which is something that is a very cool process. It can be a very intimidating process if you haven't done it before, but overall it allows you to make it exactly how you want it across the board. Now, when it comes to these custom home builders, a lot of times those incentives, whether if it's towards closing costs or if it's towards interest rate buy downs or if it's towards design center options, you don't normally get that as much. Some builders will give you something, typically towards the design center, but normally because of the fact that you're controlling more of the process, they're not going to have as much incentive to give to you because of the fact that you have that control. So again, custom homes are very hard to come by here in Jacksonville. Normally a lot of times these custom homes, they're going to require you to have a budget of, depending on where you want to be at, let's call it 800,000 to multi-million. So it does require typically a higher budget here in some regards, but it is something you can do. So that's something I want to touch on too. When you're looking at tract builders, tract builders are going to normally run anywhere from the 200s, up to the 400 or 500s, depending on the area. Your semi-custom is going to normally be 500 to 600,000 up to again multi-million, and then again this custom 800,000 up to multi-million as well. So it kind of gives you an idea of the ranges that you kind of you need to be in to be able to go with each individual category of builder. And again, there's amazing communities across the board to choose from. There's whether if it's looking for a lot, looking for a builder to build with. So again, all you have to do is reach out to me to know more about that. And I have also shown some videos or shot some videos on this channel that you can find in our playlist that go over that in detail as well. But now here's a couple of things I do want to end it on before we kind of wrap this up. These are some good housekeeping items to always know with any builder if you've never bought with a new builder before. One of which is when you buy a home with a new construction home builder, typically these builders are going to use their own homegrown contracts. And with using their homegrown contracts, it's going to be one of those things where they're going to push a lot of fees, a lot of closing costs that would normally be a seller cost item when you're buying a pre-existing home onto you as the buyer. So again, when you're going with a tract builder, having that already in place where they're covering your closing costs, again, it's one of those things you could look at as maybe they're baking it into the closing costs, what they're giving, they're kind of baking into what again they're making in a sense. But in general, when it comes to new construction, it's important to know that you will be at a higher closing cost percentage to be able to buy a home with them. Typically for pre-existing homes here in Jacksonville, anywhere from 2.5% to 3% of the purchase price is what you're going to see for closing costs and prepaids. Again, this is not going to include realtor fees. That's something that if you want to know more about that, you got to reach out to me as well. But with new construction, that 2.5% to 3% can sometimes balloon up to 4% to 5% of the purchase price. So definitely something that's very important to know across the board. The other tidbit that's important to know is that when you buy a new construction home, you have to think about the fact of what was it a year ago? It was probably land. When it was land, the county that it was in was obviously going to be charging a lot less for the taxes on that vacant land. However, once the county gets what's called a certificate of occupancy, pretty much stating, hey, we have a house here now, they will do what's called reassess, the valuation of that property. So one thing that some builders do a good job of kind of mentioning, sometimes they don't always do, or it gets lost in translation. Again, sometimes when you're building, it can be a year-long process, so you may not always remember it if it was told to you at the beginning, is that when you buy a new construction home, you always have to take into account that after your first year living in the house, your taxes are gonna get reassessed and you're gonna see a sharp increase in the taxes you're paying for that home. So that's one of those things that sometimes the lenders do a good job of kind of budgeting that into your loan, do a good job of explaining that to you, that you just want to make sure you save a little bit more for that first year for when your payment gets reassessed. Because again, when the taxes go up, your mortgage payment will also change to cover that. But not always is that known, and so that becomes sometimes a big caveat that I get calls on all the time where I get asked, Justin, why did my payment go up $500, $600, $700 from last year? Well, that's because your taxes, they got reassessed. And now that they know that you have a house there, you're paying what everyone else is paying for your taxes. So that's important to know across the board, especially too if you're paying cash, because no one's gonna really tell you that. You have to just be aware of that if you are on limited income. So again, those are just the good things, really good tidbits that are good to know across the board when buying a new construction home. So what do you think? Good information that I went over today? That's always my goal. My goal is always to provide the best information to you, the audience, as possible. Whether if you're buying a home here in Jacksonville, or really if you're buying a home anywhere in the country, because a lot of what I went over in this video can be applied almost anywhere, not just here in Jacksonville, but ultimately that's my goal, is to provide value to you, the audience, to help you in your decision-making process when the time comes. But like I said multiple times throughout this video, if you have any questions, if there's anything you want to go over into a deeper dive with me on, whether it's about a builder, a neighborhood, what the process in general looks like when you first start your home search, all you have to do is reach out to me with a call, a text, an email. It's gonna be on the screen. Also, you can always, again, schedule time on my calendar. That link is gonna be in the description of this video. And don't forget that we have tons of videos of different new construction homes that we've shot over the years, and that will be at the end of this video as well. So feel free to click on that. And again, if there's any questions, I'm always happy to help. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.